Hi, I'm John Green and this is Crash Course World History, and today we're going to be talking about how you and possibly thousands of others are able to watch our videos and how that computer you're watching the video from or the clothes on your back wouldn't have even been made without the ideas and machinations of inventors and thinkers of the 18th, 19th, and 20th centuries.
Mr. Green, why are we, learning about, this languagey stuff?
Well, me from the past, dialects and languagey stuff, unfortunately remain pretty consistent over time, as seen with languages like Mandarin and dialects with ancient origins, like the Romaica in northern Turkey. In comparison, that short 150 years span of time from 1750 to 1900 saw many things drastically change about everyday life for many of those living from London to Hong Kong, largely due to a couple events. Let's ponder a few questions. You've got clothes on your back, Industrial Revolution. You've got the right to host backyard barbecues in your big old red, white, and blue apron, Enlightenment thinkers and revolutionaries. You've got a toilet to flush down your waste, Industrial Revolution. You've got free education from when you're 5 to 18 years old, Industrial Revolution. You've got your backpack that's made in Cambodia or possibly some other Eastern Asian nation that probably manufactured it in a sweatshop, Globalization. If things didn't happen like they did, you'd still be living in your family's farm in the countryside and not in a city. Now, don't get too comfy because today we're discussing Unit 5 in our AP World History curriculum, the era of revolution and the inklings of true globally connected world. The years prior to 1750 and the Industrial Revolution were drastically different to what you and me would call everyday life. Life expectancy never rose above 35. Few were given proper education, and a majority of all people were living and working on farms. Not to mention there was no electricity or running water, so if you had to do the do, you did it in the streets or in a hole. This drastically changed with the introduction of new ideas and technologies brought about by the Industrial Revolution and the minds of thinkers like Locke, Rousseau, and Voltaire, who all lived under a chronological blanket called the Age of Isms. The Age of Isms, as it is aptly called, saw the birth of many new and radically different economic systems and ways of thought. For the first time in centuries, burly European men would go to meet in an establishment to debate rather than to drink and tussle and fight and roughhouse and drink some more. Oh, you get the point. People began questioning everything, from our connection to God and religion to how the king just wasn't cutting it in terms of leadership, and how our little nation is so much better in comparison to that dinky little nation to the east of us. Socially, many previously established social hierarchies began to crumble as a new economic class began to rise from the ashes and smoke pillars of the factories, the middle class. People everywhere, not just the Europeans, pretty much the Europeans, began to see themselves and others in a new light as a new sense of community developed, based upon a common language, religion, social customs, and territory. These commonalities often end at the border of a state, and this sense of nationalism and fervor ultimately led to an Austrian-born Adolf Hitler in Unit 6 to lead a war of eradication and destruction for all those that are not considered Aryan. Aryan or not, the ideas of the Enlightenment spurred many to act and seek out change. The American Revolution was based upon ideas of capitalism and a free market, as well as Enlightenment philosophy. The French Revolution was popularized by philosophies or intellectuals who put scientific reason to social order. The leader of the Haitian Revolution, Toussaint Louverture, was well-read in Enlightenment thought and was inspired by the heroic actions undertaken in the name of freedom by the American and French. The numerous political upheavals that took place during these years occurred largely because of the spread of European thought. The rebellions and revolutions stimulated the growth of regionalism and nationalism as the spread of European Enlightenment ideas gained traction in areas around the world. But you know what all those rebellions, from the American to the Haitian to the ones that blew up the Death Star, all have in common? They all hated empires, and for that matter, imperialism. As European nations began clamoring for resources due to the staggering rate at which many of them were industrializing, they had come to realize that looking across the ocean would likely be their best bet. Leading powers at the time, Great Britain, France, Belgium, and friends all scramble to capture as much land and as much resources as they can in order to feed the industrial beast that lurked at home. Africa, Latin America, North America, Asia, South America, heck, even Australia wasn't safe from the clutches of imperialism. Conditions were terrible for the natives, as many were forced into coerced labor systems, harvesting cash crops such as cotton in India or sugarcane in Latin America. It got even worse when looking at the mindsets of the whites that were doing the conquering, the slaving, the managing, etc., etc. Those who weren't white were discriminated by many and backed up by another, albeit rotten branch, of Enlightenment thought, social Darwinism. The corruption of scientific thought was used to uphold the traditions of slavery by applying evolution to a race. As stated by Rudyard Kipling, take up the white man's burden. Set forth the best ye breed. Go bind your sons to exile to serve your captives' needs, or essentially do the stuff the white guys don't want to do, and everything works A-OK.
So, how did the Europeans even get an edge over all of these other regions in the first place? Let's go to the thought bubble. Technology had a hugely important, and I mean hugely important, role to play in how and why the Europeans were able to swiftly conquer and rule a majority of the world by the 19th century. Let's start off with the why, and for that we'll have to travel back to the British textile industries in the 1700s. The invention of the spinning jenny, which allowed the weaver to spin more than one cotton thread at a time, tandem with the creation of the water frame, which used water to propel the spinning wheel, helped to mechanize the cotton industry in Britain and reduce production time humongously. Soon, manufacturers were going through cotton at tremendous rates and were in constant need for resupply. So, in retaliation to this need, Britain opened colonies in India, which allowed for a steady stream of cotton to arrive raw, and to be later finished and processed to make thread. To further automatize and speed up the manufacturing process of many goods, James Watt created the steam engine, which in time came to power steam-powered locomotives and ships. Mr. Watt is so important because he helped to revolutionize the communication and transportation sectors of society. Now, people weren't confined to their local farms and villages. They were allowed to explore and live in other areas. Rather than a 6-day horse ride, it was as simple as a couple hours via steamship or train. With Watt's invention, he helped to connect the world like we've never seen anyone else do prior to him. So, what about what, right? Let's get back to all the cool and exciting technological improvements of the Industrial Revolution, shall we? Ultimately, because yarn and thread could be spun and woven faster than ever, processing and shipping these materials can be done faster than ever, and receiving these processed finished goods can be done faster than ever. Did I mention that we here at Crash Course sell an $18 Mongols t-shirt made out of 100% cotton on dftba.com? Must be a coincidence, huh?
Thanks, Thought Bubble. Shameless promotions aside, the Industrial Revolution had more social and environmental impacts than you might think at first glance. Take a typical 19th century girl and a typical 19th century family and compare that with a 17th century girl and her family. The familial relations for the girl living in an industrial era were varyingly different than the girl living in the 1600s. For one, many children at the time were forced to work in order to support their families, as wages were typically low, and in that many families began to separate and lose contact as most, if not all, members of the households were working to make ends meet. Families in the 1800s and the 1900s were much more distant than those of previous years, as more time was spent in factories than at home, in stark contrast to the horseback nomadic lifestyle of, you guessed it, the Mongols. Cities like London and Paris went under massive urbanization as farm folks seeking employment moved to the big cities looking for opportunity. Slums were prevalent as few neighborhoods were planned, and waste and pollution were rampant in these slums. This left an extremely large ecological footprint and created inhumane living conditions. Tenements or factory-owned apartment complexes located in slums crammed many families into tight, congested rooms and were breeding grounds for diseases like cholera, dysentery, and tuberculosis. The individuals who lived in these slums and somehow worked through these miserable conditions were individuals of the working class. Because of the Industrial Revolution, a new middle class formed. Those who could manage the working class and typically held office jobs were said to be in white-collar jobs.
Oh, it's time for the open letter? An open letter to Sun Yat-sen. But first, let's see what's in the secret compartment today. Oh look, it's a train whistle. A miniature representation of the world's rapid change to a globalized, communicable network. Dear Sun Yat-sen, why'd you have to leave us like that, man? You were so cool. You were like the guy that was going to change China for the better. The leader of the short-lived Chinese Republic. You were really important in establishing the basis for the Chinese Nationalist Party, which ruled China for decades in the 20th century. You were like the basis for Chinese policy and thought for years on end. And they even call you the forerunner of the Democratic Revolution. But because you died to that stupid little liver tumor so quickly, you were never able to see China recover from the Boxer Rebellion, the Taiping Rebellion, the Opium Wars, all the things that Japan did. Well, You get the point. If only you were there long enough to ever use this train whistle. Best wishes, John Green. So in all this talk of conflict, revolution, economics, and politics in Unit 5, many people around the world at this time chose to migrate out of their homes. In an exodus-like manner, the Japanese, Indians, Italians, and many others migrated in order to find work or were forced to work, as seen with over 3.5 million Indians forcibly relocated to Africa to provide labor for plantations. These migrations are similar to what we see in modern day, as many immigrants flock to developed nations like the US, Great Britain, and Germany in search of work. This influx of new people and cultures resulted in the diffusion and melding of ideas and identities. A modern example would be the Chinese, Cuban restaurants that have become very popular in recent years, as food from Chinese immigrants hundreds of years ago melded with the cuisine of the native Cuban people. However, this melding didn't always work out, as many tried to get these new immigrants out of their lands, as best seen in the U.S. Chinese Exclusion Acts, the White Australia policy, and the Ghost Dance. In conclusion, Unit 5 sees the first time that the entire world, minus Antarctica, was interconnected and linked through political and economic relations. New fields of thought and industry fueled change in this time of rapid growth, and in turn the Industrial Revolution and the Age of Isms created an innumerable amount of inventions and ideas that shaped the modern era into what it is today. Next week, we'll be talking about Unit 6, the era of internet memes and mobile games. Thanks for watching. I'll see you next time. Crash Course is written and produced by Dang O. Our script supervisor is Dang O. The show is written by me and my high school history teacher, Miss Offer. Our graphics team is Leah Im, and we are ably interned by Michael Castellanos and Simone Himes. Last week's phrase of the week was fried chicken. If you want to suggest future phrases of the week or guess at this week's, you can do so in the comments. And where you can also ask questions about today's video that will be answered by our team of historians. Thanks for watching Crash Course, and as they say in my hometown, don't forget to be awesome.